the leaves grow on the trees, you know, the birds and the bees, and all the girls start to tease.
Hi, I'm Bronwen and welcome to Studio Q, Queen's only weekly TV show.
And I'm Sellery. On this week's show, the new Journal House, The Nightmare on Earl Street.
Also this week, student sprinklers exposed and 4 teams fight it out in the AMS elections. Excuse me, Bruce?
We've been waiting with bated breath upon promises and rumor. Though it officially opened its doors last week, the renovated Journal House was scheduled to open over half a year ago. Michael Wise has investigated these delays and is joining us in the studio tonight. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Bruce. On February 1st, the Queen's Journal held an opening ceremony for their new office. For the Journal, the move to 272 Earl Street meant the start of physical autonomy from the AMS. For the AMS, the move means the end of a drawn-out, ambitious project that sought to put a big dent in their pocketbook. For while the Journal House went from being an idea to a reality in little over a year, it had quite a rocky trip along the way.
Come on, get a hand on it.
All right, I'll push
One hand. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
With the smash of a bottle of champagne, the Journal House was officially christened. It's a brand new home for a paper that's almost 120 years old. For the staff, it was an occasion to celebrate.
For the last 5 months, we've been in a space that was about half the size of the space that we had last year, and we were all sort of crawling all over each other and didn't have desks and didn't have a place to store our stuff, and this has just been wonderful.
The entire Journal House project started in late 1989 when the AMS Strategic Planning Committee decided to look at ways to free up space in the JDUC for use by other student groups. They looked at building additions to the Skylight Dining Room and renting space in the new library, but those options proved too expensive. Instead, using money from their unallocated surplus fund, they decided to buy and renovate the former Duke of Earl, a house at 272 Earl Street. They saw the Journal as an ideal tenant. The newspaper could get away from the AMS, and their office space could be put to other uses. The AMS had hoped to have the house renovated and ready for occupancy in September 1990, but when they bought the house, they weren't quite sure of what they were getting involved in. They had 2 contractors look at the house, and they were told that for between $30,000 and $40,000, the Duke of Earl could be renovated into usable office space. But the people that looked at the house were contractors, not structural engineers, and as a result, they didn't catch some of the major structural flaws with the building.
I think, to be fair to the AMS, when they bought the house, yes, they were given certain estimates as to what it would take to take the house itself up to code. It wasn't a structural analysis. So as soon as we had other people go through the house, they said that's not, like, even if we hadn't put an addition on, they said that's not going to work because your house is bent and crumbling. So it wasn't as thorough an examination as the house probably should have had.
Due to the age of the house, the roof was in sad need of repair. The house's gabling, the triangular sections of the wall that touched the roof, was actually leaning to one side by almost 30 centimeters. The walls of the building were also in bad shape. Some were rotting, others were charred from a fire in the house almost 70 years ago. Regardless of that, the AMS spent $174,000 to buy the house. On top of that, the AMS agreed to pay $75,000 for renovations to the house and to repair the roof. But when they approached the Queen's Journal, they found the house itself was too small. There was no space to do layout work. So the plans were changed, and the AMS gave the Queen's Journal a 10-year loan for $100,000 to build an addition. The initial cost of the project was set at $349,000. The AMS had hoped to start work on the project on May 1st so that it would open in September. All they needed was a building permit. But getting that permit proved harder than they thought. The start date of the project kept getting delayed, first because of the misreading of the site plan, and then later when the project got tangled up with red tape at Kingston City Hall. A lot of people were quick to blame City Hall for the holdups, but one of the biggest delays was caused by the AMS itself. The city refused to issue a building permit for the addition because they thought its design would cause water to travel over the sidewalk when it rained. They wanted a catch basin installed at a cost of $12,000, but the AMS didn't want to pay for it. Instead, they ordered their architect to find an alternative and changed the design of the addition to eliminate the problem. It took the architects almost 5 weeks to eventually realize there was nothing they could do. Jeff Keim was the project manager for the house and worked closely with the architects and the AMS. Studio Q reached him by phone at his home near London, Ontario. He says the AMS should have just put in the catch basin and not tried fighting it.
What that ended up doing was slowing the project down, running up the architect's costs.
In the end, the AMS had to pay for the basin as well as the increased architectural bills. Keim says the delay caused a domino effect that pushed back the entire construction timeline. Once the catch basin problem had been resolved, it came time to choose a contractor. Armed with $175,000 to renovate the house, the AMS sent out tenders to 4 companies. Only one offered a bid. It came in at almost $205,000. That was more than the AMS could afford. Instead, they bartered the contractor down to $169,000. What they got in return was a journal house with no frills. The painting, drywalling, and landscaping would have to be done at a later date at an additional charge. On August 13th, work finally began on the house. But even before the project started, it was clear that there wasn't enough money to finish the job. In planning the initial costs, the AMS didn't take other things into account, like the catch basin, the darkroom, or a contingency fund to handle emergencies.
Well, I guess hindsight's always 20/20.
Brent Patry acknowledged that some mistakes were made.
I think we budgeted way back in December or February for the right end cost. We just didn't plan it out as well as we could have. Yeah.
But most importantly, the AMS simply forgot to include the cost of the architect in the original estimate. Those costs were thought to be around $6,000 to $8,000 originally, but due to the extra work involved in redesigning the addition, those costs soared to over $21,000. In order to pay for those additional costs, the AMS gave the Queen's Journal an additional $45,000 loan. On top of that, the house was given an $11,000 accessibility grant to put in an accessible washroom and a wheelchair ramp. That pushed the new costs of the house to $405,000.
The project was ill-budgeted right from the start. The AMS had hoped to do something for a lot less than was realistic. Now, this gave problems right away to all the people that were working on it, in that they had high expectations and then were quickly shot down once the realities came back. And this made it difficult to work on the project. Tempers ran high as we started to realize what was going to happen.
The extent of the problems caused several people to have second thoughts about the project. Studio Q obtained this report from the AMS Board of Directors to the AMS Assembly. It reads, "These additional costs truly pain me. If the true costs of this project were known at the outset, it is possible that we may have chosen a different path." Many shared that feeling.
I don't think a few of the people would have been as gung-ho to do the whole project over again.
As building continued and the projected finishing date kept getting pushed back, signs like this became commonplace in the Journal as the staff eagerly awaited their new home. The paper had a large portion of its office space taken away in September because, unlike their new house, the expansion of the AMS copying center was on schedule. And because of the delays over the summer, the house's roof was being rebuilt during Kingston's rainy season. A sudden rainstorm hit on October the 18th, causing yet another delay in the project.
When the actual storm hit, it was so windy and raining so hard and it came up so quick that there was no time to get tarps up there. It would have been extremely dangerous on a wet plywood roof to try and walk around and nail tarps down. Not to mention you probably would have been blown off.
As a result, the water caused thousands of dollars damage to the flooring, ceilings, and wiring. In addition, the drywall on the first and second floors of the existing house was ruined. Since the whole house now had to be drywalled, it was also decided to properly insulate the exterior walls. Once again, the project needed more money. This time, the AMS gave the project an additional $20,000. This was to cover these damages as well as to pay for exterior lighting and a ventilation system for the darkroom. Construction continued with the help of student volunteers, and eventually the house was ready for the Journal to move in January. Even then, they were forgiving.
The nature of the business is, unfortunately, that it tends to be, it tends to run over budget and it tends to run late. It's very hard. There are so many different things that can go wrong. It's hard to get an on-time, under-budget, good project.
Eventually, with all the bills in, the total cost of the Journal House was around $425,000, a lot less than the $500,000 rumor going around campus, but still almost $76,000 over the original estimate. And that figure doesn't include the additional administrative costs to the AMS or the salary paid to Jeff Keim, the project manager. And that $425,000 turns out to be about $100 a square foot, making it the cheapest option the AMS could have pursued. And eventually the Journal won't be the only occupant in the house. As part of the terms of one of the loans, the AMS has control of the basement of the addition of the house, which it plans to renovate and turn into office space for another student club sometime in the future. Bruce?
Thanks a lot, Mike. Now, Mike, there's been a lot of talk about a conflict of interest charge between the business manager of the AMS, Joanne Bechtold, and her husband, the realtor, who sold the house. Can you tell me a bit about what the story is there?
Okay, Bruce, I did some checking into that, and yes, Dave Bechtold had a co-listing on the house. Now, I talked to a few of the people of the AMS this year, and although they had a few ethical questions about the transaction itself, they said there was no conflict of interest between Joanne Bechtold and the AMS. As it turns out, last year, two members of the AMS independently approached Dave Bechtold regarding the house, and Joanne Bechtold really had no say as to whether the AMS should buy the house itself. Okay.
Thanks, Mike. That was really interesting. It's February again, that time of year when Queens becomes a hotbed of political activity. And the campus is filled with talk of issues of the day and promises of politicians. Yes, once again, the AMS elections are here. This year, the race for control of Queen's student government is especially tight, with 4 teams running for AMS executive positions. Marichka Melnyck reports on the politics of getting elected in Queens.
This year, 4 teams are running for positions on the AMS executive. For those of you who haven't read the Journal or Golden Words, or haven't had a chance to attend the candidates' debates, here's a crash course in the teams running to help you make your choice. Maureen Armstrong, Mark DePrato, and Suzanne Kim are all experienced members of this year's AMS.
I think all 3 of us are very well qualified for the positions that we're running for.
They believe their experience has taught them what the AMS needs.
The more people are involved, the more ideas we have flowing, and the more effective the AMS will be.
Ali Velshi, Paul Finch, and Heather Armstrong are focusing on bringing students' interests into the AMS.
We're not just here to run a budget. We are a society with 11,000 members. It is our responsibility to see what the students want of us and carry that out.
Velshi hopes to return the AMS to its original task of working for the students.
It represents the priorities of the students that have mandated us to do so.
Scott Kelly, Mike Letros, and Tracy Bourne all have experience in ASSIS and work together well as a team.
Our approach will be to reaffirm this liaison between students and the AMS.
They are promoting a careful but progressive plan of action.
There's a lot of things that we can do. We go back to basics approach, get things back to first principles, then we can start expanding again.
The 4th team consists of renegades Brendan Quarry, Peter Whiteman, and Adrian Beeston.
We're not really politicians. We don't look like politicians. We're students, and we're tired of being silent.
This party advocates a radical populist approach for the AMS.
People are so worried about offending other people that we're not...
For once, the AMS election looks like it's going to be a close race. And with 4 teams running, it's not going to be dull. Think about who you're going to support on February 13th and 14th. And remember, vote early, vote often. Marichka, Melnyck, Studio Q.
We interrupt the show momentarily for a special live report. Studio Q investigative reporter Jamie Farr is in downtown Kingston at this point at a reputable downtown location, and he has a fast-breaking story. If we could go to Jamie. Jamie, can you hear me?
Hello, Brucey. Yes, I hear you loud and clear. For those of you who may have heard the rumors or who may have run directly into the massive veil of secrecy, I can say now with almost certainty that it is true. Arnold Schwarzenegger is in Kingston. I repeat, Arnold Schwarzenegger is in Kingston. Now, we haven't had that confirmed, but several of our journalists do believe we've seen him. For several days now, I, along with our crack team of dedicated journalists, have been trying to track down this elusive superstar. In many cases, we've run into open hostility as we've tried to find this man. Definitely members of Schwarzenegger's entourage want to keep this very secret. This is a very quiet trip. This should not get out.
Jamie, it seems rather weird that Schwarzenegger is here in Kingston. It's a small place. Do you have any idea, any clue why he's here?
We're not quite sure why he is here. All I can say right now is that he has been sighted. We've seen him downtown, or we believe we've seen him downtown. We have some footage. You'll see that later. I can only speculate. Hang on. Apparently, okay, we have an update. My producer, Damien Kindler, has an update. Damien, why don't you come out here and tell us what have you found out?
Okay, Jamie, the latest that we can speculate as far as why Arnold Schwarzenegger is in Kingston is that inside sources have said that he might be visiting local celebrity Dan Aykroyd. That is unconfirmed. Another speculation by those in the know is that maybe he is in fact scouting locations for Kindergarten Cop 2. Another possibility, this is an outside chance, is that it's a surprise speaking engagement at Grant Hall. Again, Jamie, these are all unconfirmed, and that's really all we know at the moment. We really don't know much more.
Okay, thank you very much, Damien. Thank you. Keep us updated if there's any change on that. Bruce?
Jamie, you seem to expect a large number of fans who would be welcoming Schwarzenegger to Kingston. Do you have any idea why people aren't there? Is he here?
Okay, there's no one down here because I must reiterate that this matter has been kept very quiet. Nobody is to know about this. How do we know he's here? Well, actually, we're not quite sure. We haven't seen him actually come in or out of here, but there have been several indications that something fishy is going on here. As you may notice behind me, security has been increased. Security, I notice, is never this strong down here. How do we know he's here in general? I'm going to have to... I think we have some tape. We have some tape that we shot earlier today. I believe... Have you got it queued? Have you got it? Yeah, okay. Right now, we're going to roll that tape of what we believe to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, downtown Kingston, shot earlier today. Okay, roll the tape. Now, roll it. I believe that's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's just come out of Cafe Max. We don't want to get too far behind him. But we're gonna follow him. We're gonna try and keep out of sight. We don't want to spook him.
See him?
No, I don't see him, David.
No.
Okay.
Oh no. How'd he go?
Cut it.
Okay, fine. There he is, man.
Okay.
All right.
We picked up the trail. Going to this building here. We're going to try and see if we can get a word with him. in here. We think he's in this room. Hello. Hello. Hi, is Mr. Schwarzenegger here?
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Schwarzenegger's not here.
Are you sure? I thought I saw him in there.
Oh, I'm sorry, you must be mistaken. He's
Really?
really not here.
Really? Okay.
Would you like to leave a message?
No, it's okay. Thank you very much. We'll come back later, maybe.
Fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, Bruce, I mean, that footage says it all. I mean, that just sums it up. He's here. He's here somewhere. I know it. I can sense it in my bones. I've got to really give my hand to the camera guys taking that footage. That was excellent. We appear to be having some technical difficulties with our lights, but that doesn't matter. We have enough natural light here. It should suffice. Not much more to report at this point. I'd just like to say that I, along with my cameraman Dave Brady, Dave McKinnon, the producer, will stick it out here. We're going to stay here till something happens. I'm sure this will be soon, and we will keep you updated. Once again, Arnold Schwarzenegger in Kingston, probably here. We're not quite sure. It's not confirmed. This is Jamie Farr live in Kingston. Back to you, Bruce.
Thank you, Jamie. Wow, this is really exciting. What I'm wondering is what Arnold Schwarzenegger's doing walking into my astonishing self, the lingerie store. Okay, now I think it's time for a rare treat. Bruce, you have a story for us this week, don't you?
Thank you, Bronwen. If you're sick of superiors, bored with the 9-to-5, and desperate to make more than minimum wage, you might jump at the opportunity to be your own boss. Run your own business, the ads say, make loads of money running a student franchise. Well, I checked into a relative newcomer called Student Sprinkler Services. Before you sign on the dotted line, talk with former managers, ask a lot of questions, and make sure you don't get hosed.
The Summer Job Fair is an annual event that brings the employers to the students. This year, there were about 5 franchise operations looking for aggressive managers. College Pro Painters, the firm that gave birth to the idea, employed over 200 Queen's students last summer. Their format has been copied by other companies, including Student Sprinklers. Managers operate a franchise, paying a substantial royalty fee in exchange for extensive training and decreased risk. I spoke with a number of former managers who reflected on the promises of training, support, wealth, and success.
You know, I don't want to slander the company, but it was a lie. It was just it was a blatant lie.
Installation requires knowledge of plumbing and design, and managers say it's too complex to learn just by studying a manual and attending a one-day training session.
We thought, okay, sure, we'll understand it all. But we just scratched the surface. You didn't know anything until you started putting it in, and then hands-on was the only way you were going to learn. If you're going to do something like that, you need a lot of training.
It's the promise of windfall profits that hooks most starving students.
He said from $12,000 to $15,000. He said he worked in marketing his first year and made from $12,000 to $15,000. He said, I guarantee in London South that you'll make $7,000 for the summer, and that we've never had problems before.
The recruiting booklet shows the average net profit to be over $10,000. This figure is different than the comparison chart advertisement, which shows a net income of $18,000. The massive gap between the two estimates went unexplained. Kevin Prescott, a recruiter from head office, didn't feel the figures were misleading and maintains that the high-end estimate of $18,000 is fair.
I don't see anything wrong with that at all. That matches my stats exactly.
But actual income differs greatly from the financial facts promised.
I have about $2,000 loan at the bank. I've paid off $1,000 of it right now, and it was about another $500 I borrowed from my parents, so I guess minus $2,500.
Student Sprinkler's recruiting manager here in Queens is Pete Talachek. He made $8,000, a figure still $2,000 below the supposed average. But Talachek had 2 years' experience installing sprinkler systems before he struck out on his own. He also had an equal partner to share the stress, the risk, and the workload. The obstacles faced by a solo manager with no experience can be immense.
You end up short of your quota, he can take the royalty from that. So if your quota is $50,000 and you get $40,000, whatever the royalty is for that $10,000 that you were short, he can claim.
And this is an agreement you signed?
Yes.
Though unrealistic about income, Student Sprinklers is upfront about the amount of work involved.
60-hour week. You're looking at working Saturdays. You're looking at putting a lot of time and effort into something. It's your own business. If you fail, it's not the product that's failing, it's you failing the product.
For all the trials and tribulations, a difficult experience became a valuable lesson.
Student Sprinklers doesn't push you along. You have to pull yourself along.
I think they got in a little bit over their head. They didn't really realize what they're doing. Maybe they don't understand the concept of running your own business. I mean, it's not a cakewalk, and it's something mom or your daddy can't get you out of.
The managers who failed recognize the mistakes they made, but they feel that a better company could have helped them through it. The emotion and bitterness are still evident.
Frustrated at how much work we were doing and how little we were getting back.
The company's growing. Granted, there has been some things done wrong in the past, but those are all being corrected slowly and slowly.
Would you call him a liar?
Just deceit. More than a liar. A lie to me is just something you tell someone. Like it's just this big, big scheme or a scam. He's working, he's got this set up and he's just milking the students for all they're worth.
Running your own business is a great experience and could prove to be very profitable. But the war, the GST, and the recession will make 91 a very challenging summer. Make sure you ask everyone lots of questions before you get involved. Bronwen?
Bruce, did Jeff really lose $2,500?
He actually came out minus $2,500.
Oh, that's harsh for September. Whew. And now for my favorite part of the show, the upcoming events around town. Beginning of the week, we have the...
Excuse me, Bronwen, can I interrupt for just 1 second? Okay. We have another update from Jamie Farr. He's standing by downtown once again. I think there's some news there. Jamie, can you hear me? Do we have Jamie online?
I want you to leave.
Jamie?
Arnold Schwarzenegger here. I know he's in...
Bruce, the climate's starting to heat up here. Unfortunately, security is getting a little angry. They've asked us to leave. The climate's not good right now. I'm going to try.
Can you please get out of here?
All I want to know is Arnold Schwarzenegger here. Is Arnold Schwarzenegger here?
No, we don't. We can't answer your questions, I'm sure. Listen, get out of here now. Get that camera off now. Get it off.
Guys,
get it off now.
Hey, leave him alone. Leave him alone. What is the problem here?
You understand?
What causing you trouble? What is
Get out of here now. Please, get out.
What is the problem? What is the problem? Hey, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that to us. We're Studio Q. Leave us alone. Leave us alone. Hey.
We seem to have lost touch with Jamie. I hope he's okay and can contact us again immediately as soon as he can. Wow. Bruce, I just realized that Total Recall is playing this Thursday at the Student Film Theater. Coincidence? I think not.
Maybe it's her first celebrity opening or something. Okay, that's our show for this week. Studio Q is broadcast each week courtesy of the Communications Commission here on CableNet 13.
If you have any comments, questions, or simply feel like chatting about the fascinating world of telejournalism, please drop by our offices in room 21 of the JDUC or give us a call at 545-6699. Join us again next week and we will feature stories on reactions to the Gulf War, house hunting, and romantic places to spend Valentine's Day. And for this week, I'm Bronwen Lowe and I'm actually going to head down and see if I can find Jamie. Arnold Schwarzenegger's been a big role model in my life.
You just want to go to My Astonishing Self. I'm Bruce Sellery, and that's our show for this week. See you again.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you.